Sure. After being in the room for several minutes, by the way, you can't script this in Hollywood. I was in the federal building for a scheduled briefing with representatives of Northern Command when I learned that Secretary of Homeland Security, a couple doors down, was having the press conference. My briefing was delayed because some of the folks in that brief were participating in the press conference. So I asked the folks who were escorting me in the building, can we go listen in the hopes of some information, in the hopes of some insight as to their justification for the militarization, the escalation of what was happening in Los Angeles. And surprise, surprise, no substance came from that press conference, just political attacks. When I heard the secretary, not for the first time in that press conference, talk about the needing to liberate the people of Los Angeles from their duly elected mayor and governor, it was at that moment that I chose to try to ask a question. If all the Trump administration was doing was truly focusing on dangerous, violent criminals, as they suggest, there would be no debate, there would be no disagreement. But we've seen story after story after story of hardworking women and men, maybe undocumented, but otherwise law-abiding, good people being subject to the terror that this immigration enforcement operations is subjecting the people to. I needed to speak up. I needed to try to get the information from the secretary that they've refused to provide in hearing after hearing.
So is that what you asked?
Yes. Well, I was beginning to ask. I couldn't get a couple of words out before, obviously, you saw agents respond, hands on me pretty much immediately. And look, everybody's seen the video. You know what happened after that.
Well, I'm sure you've seen the DHS spokeswoman, Tricia McLaughlin, posted that you, quote, tried to manufacture a viral moment.
Nothing could be further from the truth. Again, what are the odds? I was in a federal building, a couple of doors down, awaiting a briefing from Northern Command, because I still believe the federalization of the National Guard troops and deployment in Los Angeles was not only unlawful, unjustified, but counterproductive. It's what's escalated the tensions in Los Angeles. The sending in the Marines, as a result, look, things have been quieting down day after day, so why do you escalate by sending in the Marines? And an opportunity to ask a question, maybe get answers that DHS, including the Secretary, will not provide in committee hearings in the Senate, will not respond to the letters that we've sent inquiring. There was an opportunity to ask a question and do my job as a senator, right? Do my job as a senator in questioning a cabinet secretary.
Our CNN security correspondent, Josh Campbell, who was an FBI agent, he said just from a law enforcement perspective, Secretary Noem's security acted appropriately at the beginning. Not when you were in the hallway being handcuffed, but at the beginning, trying to keep you away or get you out of the room because you interrupted her press conference. What do you think of that?
If that's how they treat a senator trying to ask a question, here's one of my big takeaways. Then imagine not what they can do, what they are doing to so many people without titles.
But they might not have known. I know you said pretty early, I'm a senator, but...
I was escorted into that room by a National Guardsman and an FBI agent. Look, the whole Los Angeles press corps, this is Los Angeles, this is my hometown. They know who I was. And what does it say about the secretary to not know who the senator from California is, the ranking member of the Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration?
You were escorted into the room by law enforcement.
Absolutely. I was being escorted during my entire time in that building. From showing up in the building, going through security screening, escorted by an FBI agent, a National Guards member, to the conference room where I was awaiting a briefing. They're the ones I requested, well, if we're waiting, can we go listen in on the press conference? They escorted me over to the press conference. They opened the door for me, and they stood next to me while I was listening for the entire time. And then, of course, once I was forcibly removed and handcuffed.
Several of your fellow Democrats say that Secretary Noem should resign. Is that where you are?
Look, that's maybe not my focus right now, but I do think there's some serious questions. How does the cabinet secretary not know the senator from California when she steps foot into Los Angeles? She came through the Senate for confirmation at one point. And certainly, how does the Secretary of Homeland Security not know how to de-escalate a situation? It's because she can't or because they don't want to. And it sets the tone. Donald Trump and Secretary Noem have set the tone for the Department of Homeland Security and the entire administration in terms of escalation and extreme enforcement actions.
One last question. Your Democratic colleague, Senator Brian Schatz, he was defending your actions on the Senate floor. It was a pretty emotional speech. He said the way you were treated is something we see in dictatorships, that in a democracy you are allowed to be disrespectful and disruptive. I know you said that that was kind of an organic moment, but do you think more Democrats should be, in his words, disrespectful and disruptive?
I wasn't trying to be disrespectful or disruptive, and I don't think I was. I was simply asking a question. Just as the members of the press corps ask questions, members of the Congress, members of the Senate ask questions to do our job to hold the administration accountable.
While awaiting a scheduled briefing with Northern Command inside a federal building, a U.S. senator unexpectedly discovered that the Secretary of Homeland Security was holding a press conference just a few doors away. The senator, whose meeting was delayed due to overlapping participants, asked his escorts, an FBI agent and a National Guardsman, if he could listen in. His intent was to gain clarity on the Trump administration's justification for deploying federal forces and escalating military presence in Los Angeles. The senator stood quietly during the briefing, but was struck by what he described as baseless political attacks rather than any meaningful information. When the secretary claimed the federal government needed to liberate the people of Los Angeles from their elected mayor and governor, the senator felt compelled to act. He began to ask a question about the legality and necessity of the military deployment, particularly since tensions in the city had been de-escalating day by day. Before he could get more than a few words out, he was physically restrained by security personnel. The video of the incident, widely circulated online, sparked outrage and discussion. In response to criticism, DHS spokeswoman Tricia McLachlan accused the senator of trying to manufacture a viral moment, a claim he vehemently denied. He argued his actions were a natural and necessary part of doing his job, seeking accountability from a cabinet secretary who had repeatedly refused to answer congressional inquiries. The senator pointed out that if someone in his position could be so quickly dismissed and forcibly removed, it raised troubling questions about how everyday Americans, especially undocumented immigrants, are being treated by federal enforcement. He also emphasized that his identity was not in question. He had been escorted throughout the building by law enforcement officers and was well known to the local press in his hometown of Los Angeles. He questioned how the Secretary of Homeland Security could fail to recognize the senator from California, who also serves as the ranking member of the Senate Judiciary Subcommittee on Immigration. Although he did not join fellow Democrats in openly calling for Secretary Noem's resignation, he stressed that her inability or unwillingness to de-escalate the situation set a dangerous tone within the department. He believes this reflects a broader culture of extremity within the Trump administration's approach to law enforcement and immigration. In closing, the senator addressed a comment made by his colleague Senator Brian Schatz, who had passionately defended him on the Senate floor. While Schatz described the treatment of the senator as something seen in dictatorships rather than democracies, the senator clarified that he never intended to be disruptive or disrespectful. He was simply doing what elected officials and members of the press are supposed to do: ask questions and hold the government accountable.